Welcome to Gamers Garden, Seb here, and I'm looking at a cult classic in this video, so let me know what you think in the comments. Enjoy! The mid-90s renaissance in amusement arcades was largely thanks to the cutting-edge 3D games by Sega and Namco. These two giants produced increasingly powerful arcade hardware that went head-to-head for our attention, and they both brought their biggest games into our homes on the Saturn and PlayStation respectively. One of the unsung heroes in this battle was Sega's Die Hard Arcade, their first 3D attempt at a scrolling beat-em-up. So let's take a closer look at one of the swan songs of a genre that was once a cornerstone of the arcades and home consoles alike. Scrolling beat-em-ups were a huge presence in the arcades throughout the late 80s and early 90s, and this success was brought onto our home consoles. Ports and original titles sold incredibly well, but this died out with the move to 32 bits. One game that stayed true to the roots of the genre was Sega's Die Hard Arcade. Developed by AM1 and Sega Technical Institute, it was directed by Makoto Uchida, the acclaimed designer behind classic Sega beat-em-ups like Golden Axe and Alien Storm. It arrived in early '97 on Saturn, a few months after its launch on the counterpart STV arcade system, and it was strangely released in the UK just one day after the Saturn port of Die Hard Trilogy, with both games being published by Fox Interactive. It's interesting how loosely the Die Hard license is used here, with the Japanese version instead releasing as Dynamite Decker. This indifferent attitude is clearly apparent in the box art, with the Western release featuring a random looking guy dressed as John McClane, while the Eastern box art, without the license, features a hero with a striking resemblance to Bruce Willis, but in completely different clothes and with a bunch of people who had nothing to do with Die Hard. In fact, once the game starts, not that much connects the game to the film at all. You can't imagine a modern release being allowed this flexibility with the license, but the gameplay really does the genre justice. Your mission is to fight through the Nakatomi Plaza, saving the president's daughter, and fight the terrorist's leader, White Fang. The gameplay is best described as a 3D scrolling beat-em-up without the scrolling, and with a 3-button control system that's very similar to Virtua Fighter. You fight using loads of simple combos and have a grapple moveset if you get in close. You can also pick up loads of different weapons along the way, which is just as well, because unlike most scrollers, there's a notable lack of any screen clearing or crowd control moves. You play the game in solo or with a co-op partner, and you fight a very weird assortment of bad guys, with the occasional QuickTime event thrown in. If you've played early Virtua Fighter or Dead or Alive games, you'll be immediately familiar with the controls. But the game's a bit slower paced and movement isn't quite as responsive as in those games or some older scrolling beat-em-ups. Overall, the game is packed with variety but is pretty short, a notable characteristic of its arcade origins. As I mentioned, Die Hard Arcade first released in the arcades on the STV, the Sega Titan video game system. The Titan was an arcade version of the Saturn that used ROM cartridges rather than CDs and had more RAM. Now this means that Die Hard Arcade on the Saturn is almost identical to the arcade original. The game's engine is extremely robust and produces some of the very best 3D I've seen on the console. All the characters have great animations and, for the time, high polygon counts. Everything is texture matte. The camera zooms and pans fluidly around each stage, and the frame rate is rock solid throughout. A typically bizarre feature is the vintage Sega game Deep Scan from 1979. Playing this adds more credits to the main game and is a charming odyssey in this already bizarre game. Die Hard Arcade was first commissioned to shift an excess of Titan hardware in Sega of Japan's inventory, and it succeeded, becoming Sega's most successful US-produced arcade game at release. But even though this and the home version were very well received, it was still part of a dying genre. There were other attempts to keep the scrolling beat-em-up alive, like Core Design's Fighting Force, that was very nearly Streets of Rage 4, and Squaresoft's rather disappointing PlayStation 2 debut The Bouncer, but these couldn't stop the tide as gamers moved towards deeper experiences than arcade-style games could offer them. After the cancellation of Sonic X-treme in '97, Sega Technical Institute were disbanded, leaving Die Hard Arcade as their only released game on the Saturn. AM1 would go on to develop a pseudo-sequel called Dynamite Cop for Model 2 and Dreamcast, but that lacks charm and is an even shorter game that has truly faded into obscurity. History has come full circle, with the modern day indie scene delivering a new wave of 2D scrolling beat-em-ups, with games like Castle Crashers and Shank, but thanks mainly to its distinct 90s feel and often quite bizarre and funny design choices, Die Hard Arcade stands as an unsuspecting bookend to a golden age before the genre fell out of favour. Despite its short length, Die Hard Arcade is still brilliant to play and is an often overlooked highlight of the Saturn's distinguished first-party library. I hope you enjoyed this video and subscribe to my channel Gamers Garden for more things like this. If you want to find out more about the history of the beat 'em up genre, Ben Ruiz has made a fantastic timeline that's definitely worth checking out. Until the next time, happy gaming!